If you've ever lived in a cheap, drafty apartment with someone you loved, you know exactly what our place off Mississippi Avenue felt like. It was a 2-bedroom rental on the second floor. The heating barely worked, the water pressure was a joke, and the hardwood floors creaked in 3 very specific spots. If you stepped on the one right outside the bathroom at 2 a.m., the whole apartment woke up. But Chloe and Liam didn't care. They'd lived there for 3 years, and for a long time, it was everything they needed. Their life wasn't Instagram fancy. It was just a quiet, comfortable routine. Saturday mornings meant walking down to the stump town on the corner and dragging 2 cortados back up to their fire escape. They'd sit out there even when it was 50 degrees and raining, bundled in cheap blankets, just watching the cars go by. Sunday afternoons meant walking to Powell's City of Books, spending 2 hours pulling books off shelves, buying absolutely nothing, and taking the bus back home. Chloe used to say that was the whole point of loving someone. It wasn't about grand gestures or expensive dinners. It was the small, dumb, repeated stuff. The safety of knowing exactly how the other person took their coffee, or exactly which side of the couch they'd claim during a movie.
But Liam had a different ghost haunting him. He grew up outside Cleveland. His dad ran a local hardware store for 30 years. A guy who worked 60-hour weeks, came home smelling like sawdust and motor oil, and was bitterly angry about his lot in life. His dad used to drink cheap beer on their back porch and tell Liam that a real career only happened in 3 places: New York, LA, or nowhere. In Liam's mind, Portland had always been the nowhere. He never said it out loud to Chloe, but that thought lived in the back of his brain, quiet and sharp, like a splinter you ignore until you accidentally press on it. He worked in middle management at a mid-sized logistics firm. He made decent money, but every time he logged onto LinkedIn and saw a college buddy get promoted in Manhattan, the splinter dug a little deeper. Then came the fall. Liam started taking phone calls in the bedroom with the door shut. He spent hours polishing his resume at the kitchen table, snapping his laptop shut whenever Chloe walked in with groceries. She assumed he was just stressed about an upcoming performance review. She started buying his favorite snacks. She picked up his dry cleaning so he wouldn't have to think about it. Then came a random Tuesday in October. Chloe had gotten off work early and made spaghetti. Nothing crazy, just a standard Tuesday night dinner. Boiling water, chopped garlic, a jar of decent marinara. She set the plates down right as Liam walked through the front door. He had a look on his face she had never seen before. It wasn't a smile exactly. It was a tight, electric sort of energy, like he'd just robbed a bank and gotten away with it.
He didn't say anything until they were sitting across from each other. He didn't even pick up his fork. "I got the offer," he said. Chloe looked up, chewing. "What offer?" "The one in New York, director of operations. It's massive, Chloe. It's everything." Chloe's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. She swallowed, her brain playing a rapid game of catch-up. New York? They'd never talked about moving to New York. The rent, the logistics. But she pushed the panic down because she loved him, and he looked so alive. "That's amazing," she said, and for exactly 4 seconds, she meant it completely. She was already mentally calculating how much they could get for selling their couch on Craigslist. Then Liam looked down at the table. The electric energy vanished, replaced by something cold and practiced. "I think I need to go alone," he said, his voice completely flat. "Our paths are kind of splitting off right now. I need to focus on myself for a while. I need to give this job everything I have, and I can't do that if I'm worrying about us, about you adjusting to the city." He said it so calmly. He didn't stutter, he didn't cry. He looked her right in the eye and delivered the lines like he was reading off a cue card a PR team had handed him. Chloe didn't scream. She didn't throw her plate at the wall. She just sat there while her spaghetti went cold, feeling the entire floor of her life tilt sideways. Here is the brutal truth about heartbreak that nobody prepares you for. It rarely looks like it does in the movies. there's no dramatic screaming match in the rain. It arrives quietly, one cardboard box at a time.
Liam gave his 2 weeks' notice the next morning. By Thursday, the U-Haul boxes arrived flat-packed from Home Depot. Chloe didn't fight him. What was she supposed to do? Beg a man who had already mentally packed his bags? Try to convince someone that she was worth more than a title on a LinkedIn profile? Her pride wouldn't let her. More than that, the shock had completely paralyzed her. So she helped him pack. It was agonizing. It was the most excruciating 2 weeks of her life wrapped in this bizarre, polite domesticity. They divided 3 years of a life together like two accountants settling a minor business dispute. She folded his sweaters, she wrapped his coffee mugs in newspaper, she took their photos down off the living room wall, one by one. She specifically remembered taking down a picture of them at the Oregon coast, his arms wrapped around her, both of them laughing at a dog shaking water onto them. She stacked it face down on the kitchen table because she couldn't physically look at his smile while taping a box shut. Liam, meanwhile, was oblivious to the ghost town their apartment was becoming. He was practically vibrating with excitement. He talked nonstop about the corporate relocation package, the signing bonus, the glass-walled office on the 31st floor with a view of the Hudson River. He talked about it over takeout, in the car, while brushing his teeth. He never once talked about her. He never asked what she was going to do. He never even noticed that she had stopped talking entirely. One night, Chloe was in the bedroom folding laundry. She picked up an old gray wool sweater of his. It was the one he wore every winter, the one with the stretched-out collar and a hole in the left elbow that he stubbornly refused to throw away. She stood there in the middle of their bedroom, holding the sweater to her chest. A single tear escaped, dropping right onto the wool. She wiped her face fast, panicking. She listened for his footsteps. He was in the living room, taping up box number 14, quietly humming a song from the radio. He never came looking for her. By the end of the week, the apartment was unrecognizable. It looked like a place two strangers used to rent. The bookshelf had massive, glaring gaps in it, like missing teeth. The walls had pale rectangles where the picture frames used to block the sun. A pink box of voodoo donuts sat on the kitchen counter for 3 days, going stale, because neither of them had the appetite to eat them. The morning Liam finally left, Portland offered up exactly the kind of gray, drizzly, miserable sky you'd expect. He'd already shipped the big furniture east in a PODS container. This morning was just for the last few duffel bags, tossing them into the back seat of his Honda. He turned to Chloe on the sidewalk. The engine was already running, puffing white exhaust into the damp morning air. For half a second, she saw something cross his face. His eyes darted across her face, taking in her messy hair, her oversized cardigan, the familiar way she chewed on her bottom lip when she was cold. Something almost like doubt flickered in his eyes. Then he blinked, and it was gone. The corporate mask snapped back into place. He pulled her into a hug. It was a real one, warm, tight, smelling like his deodorant and rain. It was the kind of hug that hurts infinitely worse than a cold goodbye, because for a split second, it felt exactly like the man she had loved for 3 years. He pulled back and looked at her. "Take care of yourself, okay?" That was it. Not, "I love you," not, "I'll call you when I get there," not even, "I'm sorry." Just, "Take care of yourself." Like he was an old coworker he was bumping into at a grocery store. He got in the car. He put it in drive. The red taillights pulled slowly out of the driveway, past the neighbor's overgrown fence, past the maple tree shedding its wet leaves on the street. Chloe stood on the wet sidewalk a long time after the car turned the corner and disappeared, much longer than she'd ever admit to anyone. Then she walked back inside. The apartment suddenly felt massive. The silence was deafening. She walked into the bare living room, sat down right in the middle of the empty floor, pulled her knees to her chest, and cried the kind of heavy, ugly cry that makes your ribs ache. No one was there to hear it. That was the whole point. The first few months were a dark, heavy blur. Chloe won't pretend they weren't. Financially, the breakup was a disaster. She couldn't afford the rent on the 2-bedroom apartment with just her junior graphic design salary. She had to break the lease, lose her deposit, and move across town to a tiny, run-down 1-bedroom in Kenton. It was the kind of place where the hot water lasted 4 minutes, and the neighbors argued through paper-thin walls. But the rent was cheap, and nobody there knew her name. She didn't call Liam. Not once. It wasn't easy. Some nights, the silence in her new apartment was so loud it physically hurt. Her son would hover over his contact photo, a picture of him laughing over a beer, for a full minute. She'd type out a text. "Hey, how's the city?" Or, "I found your charger, do you want me to mail it?" Then she'd delete it, lock the phone, and shove it into her nightstand drawer so she wouldn't look at it. For weeks, she tortured herself with the same looping thoughts. Was she too boring? Was she holding him back? Was she just not enough of a reason to stay? It was a stone in her pocket she couldn't stop turning over. But eventually, around month 3, the exhaustion burned out into something harder, something steadier. She realized that a man who chooses to walk away from you, who looks you in the eye and tells you he wants to do life without you, doesn't need you chasing him to prove he made the right call. So instead of calling him, she went to a local craft store and bought a $5 canvas and some cheap acrylics. She wasn't an artist. She did digital layouts for corporate brochures, but she needed something to do with her hands on Friday nights that didn't involve drinking wine and scrolling through 3 years of digital memories. She propped the canvas against her bedroom wall and just started painting. It started small, messy. Her early work was heavily saturated in dark blues, grays, and blacks. Lots of wide, empty space on the canvas. She painted for hours until her back ached and her fingers were stained. Her whole living room permanently smelled like wet paint and turpentine. Her landlord actually left a polite, passive-aggressive sticky note on her door, asking her to please crack a window once in a while. She had to pick up part-time hours pulling espresso shots at a coffee shop on Alberta Street to help cover her bills. It was humbling, at 28, to be a barista again, but it got her out of the house. Her coworker was a girl named Priya, a 22-year-old art student who had zero filter and ran the register. One slow Tuesday, Chloe brought her phone to work and showed Priya a picture of her latest painting. Priya squinted at the screen, adjusted her apron, and deadpanned, "Damn, girl, that's a lot of sad in 1 square foot. Are you okay, or do I need to hide the sharp objects?" Chloe actually laughed out loud. It startled her. It was the first time she'd genuinely laughed in months. Healing isn't linear. There was one really bad night right around the holidays. It was snowing in Portland, her heater was busted, and she was half a bottle of cheap Pinot Noir deep. She almost called Liam. She had his contact pulled up, her finger hovering right over the green call button. She sat frozen on her couch for almost 10 minutes, staring at the screen, crying quietly. Then she forced herself to stand up. She put the phone in the kitchen drawer, shut it, walked over to her makeshift studio corner, and picked up a brush. Slowly, and this took almost an entire year, the paintings started to change. The anger and the gray gave way to warmer colors. She started using ochre, rust, earthy greens, and this stubborn, vibrant kind of gold that kept showing up on the canvas, whether she actively planned it or not. Priya bullied her into making an Instagram account for her art. "You're too talented to hoard this depression art in your living room," she'd said. Chloe started posting. Just small, quiet posts, but people liked them. The algorithm caught one of her time lapses. A small following turned into a few thousand, then 10,000. By late spring, a stranger sent her a direct message. It was the owner of a well-respected boutique gallery in the Pearl District called the Ainsley. She had seen Chloe's work circulating online and wanted to know if she had a portfolio, and more importantly, if she'd ever considered doing a solo show. Chloe sat on her cheap futon and read that message 4 times before she let herself believe it wasn't a scam. 1,500 miles away, Liam's version of that year looked completely different. On paper, New York gave him exactly what he had asked for. He got the director title, he got the massive salary bump, he got the corner office on the 31st floor with floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the water. What it didn't give him was a life. His studio apartment in Hell's Kitchen was a closet. It was smaller than his old bedroom back in Portland, yet it cost over $4,000 a month. The radiator clanked violently all night, and his view was a brick wall 3 feet from his window. He thought the job would be dynamic, but it was just a richer version of the same corporate grind. He worked past 7 o'clock most nights in a sterile, glass-walled office where his coworkers were viciously competitive. They didn't have friends, they had network connections. Happy hours weren't about unwinding, they were exhausting performative events where everyone stood around in expensive coats, humble bragging about their stock portfolios. At first, Liam rode the adrenaline. He bought expensive drinks, he wore custom suits. He told himself this was what success looked like. This was what his dad had meant. But as the months dragged on, the silence of his apartment started to get louder. He ate dinner alone most nights, standing over his tiny sink, eating overpriced sushi out of a plastic container. Sitting down at his small kitchen table alone somehow felt pathetic, so he just stood. He missed the creaky floorboards in Portland. He missed the smell of Stumptown coffee. He found himself walking past local bodegas just hoping to smell something that reminded him of the fire escape on a Sunday morning. He told himself he was just adjusting. He just needed more time. Then came a Thursday night in early October, almost exactly 1 year to the day since he sat at that table and let a plate of spaghetti go cold. Back in Portland, Chloe's exhibition had officially opened at the Ainsley. It was a rainy night, but the gallery was packed, standing room only. People were walking around holding plastic cups of cheap wine, pointing at her work. A local indie paper had run a small piece on her that morning, calling her a quiet new voice worth watching. By 8 p.m., every single piece in the gallery had a red sticker next to it. She had sold out her entire collection. Chloe stood in the middle of the room, wearing a green velvet dress she'd bought secondhand. She was glowing. Priya was standing next to her, telling some ridiculous story, and Chloe tipped her head back and laughed. A real, full-body laugh, completely unguarded. Her wine glass was loose in her hand, her eyes crinkled with pure joy. Someone in the crowd snapped a photo of that exact moment. They posted it to Instagram. A mutual friend from Portland shared it on their story. In New York, the rain had been coming down in sheets since 6 o'clock. 16 floors above 6th Avenue, Liam sat alone at his kitchen counter. The apartment was completely dark, except for the harsh blue light of his laptop and his phone. His tie was still loose around his neck from a brutal, pointless meeting that had dragged on for 11 hours. He had a headache that wouldn't quit. He mindlessly tapped through Instagram stories while he waited for his Thai food to be delivered. Tap, tap, tap. He stopped. It was a photo of a woman in a green dress standing in front of a gallery wall covered in bright, warm canvases. She was laughing with her whole face. The caption underneath read, "First solo show. Every piece sold by 8 p.m. Still can't believe it." Liam read it once, then he blinked, leaned in closer, and read it again. It was Chloe. She looked entirely different. Not her face or her hair, but her energy. She looked radiant. She looked like a woman who had been broken down to the studs and rebuilt herself into something bulletproof. His hand started to shake, just slightly.
The way your hand shakes right before you drop a heavy glass you weren't ready to drop. He zoomed in on the photo. He looked at her smile. He looked at the warm gold colors and the paintings behind her. He looked at the people surrounding her, celebrating her. Then he looked up at his own apartment, the sterile white walls, the empty sink, the complete and utter silence of a life he had burned his entire world to get. He couldn't look at her smile for one more second. He set his phone face down on the counter with a hard clack. He rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands, pressing hard enough to see stars.